Bass is one of those instruments that is integral to any track that you're working on, but it can be a pretty big headache to mix. So let's solve that headache. Let's hop into Studio One. Let's mix some bass today. So inside Studio One here, we have a session pulled up from one of my nephew's songs. The working title is Folk Dance, and we have 2 bass tracks that are in here. Now, I like to record a bass amp if we have access to one, and the DI for it as well. We don't have access to a bass amp currently when we were working on this song, so we emulated one with Ampire. So if we listen to the 2 bass tracks, this is the DI bass. And then we have the amp, the bass amp through Ampire. So settings for the amp, we have the bass amp set up here. Volume slightly up just a little bit here. Treble we didn't touch. Mid-range brought it down a little bit, but then we slammed it with a tube screamer to give it the grit so we can blend the 2 together, giving us this sound. So that is all well and good. We have the clean bass, which isn't great by itself, and then blended with the distorted bass, which we've talked about previously. But we need to mix this into the tune. So let's grab some headphones here and let's take a look at what we need to do to make this work inside the tune itself. So we'll play everything together so you can kind of hear what's going on, and then we'll make it fit into context. So there's a lot of things happening here. It's a very driven song, very punchy for everything. But we need to take the bass itself and mold it just slightly. And we're going to do that with EQ, compression, and then we're going to throw in a little sidechain compression also to help with the kick. We'll get to that in a minute. So the first thing, I want to listen to just the clean bass itself. And with that, we're going to come in here, we're going to grab a Pro EQ, and we're going to listen. What I like to do, instead of boosting the lows, I tend to just kind of come into the low mids and just do a cut there, because you're going to take out a lot of the frequencies that can start to really pound right in here behind your eyes, and it's not pleasant. And you can clean up the bass and make it sound deeper than it is just by removing some of those frequencies. So just for contrast, we'll do 2 different things here with the EQ, and you can see if you tell a difference. We'll EQ it the way I was taught in college, and then we'll EQ it the way that I normally do for bass. So we have just the DI. So right in here, getting to that 95 to like 110 hertz for this specific bass and the settings that were set on the bass itself, this specific frequency range is not quite desirable. It's giving a lot of body to the bass, but it's also over accentuated, so there's a lot happening. So we can afford, and yes, we had it boosted 15 dB so we could find that frequency, but if we start to pull it down a little bit, you'll hear how everything kind of cleans up, but it also doesn't affect that low end. So it's keeping the low end where it was and then just kind of scooping out and tightening up the bass itself. So even something that small, we did a 4 dB cut with not a huge queue of frequencies. It's starting to clean that up just enough that it's not going to give you a headache over time as you're continuing to listen to it, and it's still giving you the low end response that you're going to look for. Now, let's, like I said, contrast this with how I was taught in college would be a preferred way to EQ a bass. So we're going to pull in another Pro EQ here. We're going to turn off the first one we just did, and let's listen to this and see which one you prefer. So this was the quote unquote preferred method that I was taught way back in the day of boosting all of the low end from around that 100 hertz up or down as a good boost. So we did 6 dB here, and then taking all the mids and just take them out. Just scoop out those mids. I get the theory with it because we want to boost the low end and kind of clean up those mids with it. But at the same time, we're putting a ton of information into that low end that if your system can't replicate that properly, it's very quickly overdone. And it can cause huge issues when you play your tune in a high-end system or in something that even has a small subwoofer. So you could go this route, just be very careful with how much of the low end that you're boosting, because one, you're not, like I said, you're not going to hear it in most of the stuff that you probably have in your home studio. If you have a sub, wonderful, congratulations. I don't. So we stay a little conservative, kind of just tweak things as we need for what our system can reproduce. But that's why we have headphones also, to give us a better representation of the low end that can be happening. Now, they also recommended this boost down here to try to get some fret noise. With my bass that I have, it doesn't give a ton of that fret noise that's up there, so you can do that depending on your instrument, but I tend to kind of not worry about that. Like I said, I normally just kind of scoop these out just a little bit here, and then we could take a look at some higher mids and see if we need something else, but it's sounding good right now. Now, the next step that I like to do is I do compress bass. So I'm going to come in here, just grab a simple compressor, and then here we're going to take a listen and just try to even things out a little bit, especially kind of the buzzier sections that you hear, the fret buzz itself, which is kind of coming through, not necessarily the real high-end stuff, but you can hear the kind of pops and things like that. We're just going to try to smooth everything out, not do a heavy compression, but just smooth it out a little bit here. So this was very simple compression added. So we brought the threshold down -24. I like to take the ratio up to usually 4 to 1. So this is 4.3 to 1. Pretty slow-ish attack for this type of compressor, but a quicker release time, and then just a little bit of makeup gain to bring it back up into volume here. to where it was at matching the input to the output after the compressor. So just with those two simple moves, we're going to keep the amp muted right now, but let's just listen to everything with these two simple moves and see how it's sitting in the mix right now. I still really like that. It's still got punch. It's still got low end in there. We're not losing anything by not boosting it. It's still sounding really full. So now let's focus a little bit on the amp recording itself and see what we need to adjust there. Now with the amp recording, we'll listen one more time. This is very, very distorted with that tube driver that's happening there, the tube screamer. And the tube screamer itself, to me, adds a lot of mid-range that maybe doesn't need to be there on guitar. Now, for bass, it's still there, but it's not as horrible to my ears, but we are going to take Pro EQ. We're gonna listen a little bit, see if we need to adjust some of that mid-range. And even though on the amp itself, so we have adjusted some mid-range here slightly, taking it down 28%, but let's listen in and make some adjustments and see what we need to do there. Okay, so here we went about to the 155 hertz, brought it down almost 3.5 decibels. Again, we're on the lower mid side of things still, which makes sense to me because this bass itself, how the settings are on the bass. I mean, the bass has mids, lows, and high knobs that you can adjust. So the way those settings were set to how it was recorded, this makes perfect sense to me. Every application is going to be different. Even if you think you have the settings the same, it's never going to be the same. So always listen to everything. Don't just think, oh, I did this last time, so it's going to work this time. It's not always the case. Rarely ever is that the case. So listen, listen, listen. So this simple move right here sounds good for this track. So let's blend them back together, see if they still sound okay together. I still like that. Now, this could be a little too gritty. Let's put it in context of the tune, though, and then from there, we can see if we need to dial back the distortion, if we just need to bring the fader down, if there's anything other adjustments that need to be made. Let's listen to that. I really like how that has come together. It's not so overpowering. Now for this specific tune, my nephew did want louder bass for everything because of the drive of the song itself. So it is a little louder than I would normally have something. So we could just dial it back slightly. Now here I am using my mix template, so if you do use Studio One and you don't have a mix template, head to floodwaterstudios.com/template, download your free copy of that. You can set everything up because I have everything here. This is the bass folder, the mix folder. So if I close the folder, the bass tracks go away. They're still there. You can see how everything's kind of stacked in there. If I open that folder up, you'll see all the individual tracks. But here I can adjust the whole folder with everything. So let's bring it down just slightly. We just did. See if that's a little better. So I really like that. We could probably afford to bring it up just a little bit more. Maybe bring it down about 2.5 decibels, something like that. 2.6, that works. Now, the only other thing that I would kind of look into here is doing some sidechain compression to assist the kick. Now, the bass and the kick are supposed to work in tandem, as in they're essentially kind of the same instrument, where the kick is the beginning of the transient and the bass follows out the note. So if the bass is overlapping with the kick, you can get some muddiness, you can get some loss of clarity. So what I want to do here is just on the group itself, I'm going to come in with another compressor, and we are going to set this to a side chain, and we're going to choose our kick drum. So now every time the kick hits, the bass will be compressed just a little bit to give the kick room to breathe, but it's not going to affect the tonality or the drive of your bass either. It's just kind of helping some things along, helping everything sit in the mix then, where the bass isn't overpowering any other low-end instruments you have, but it's giving you a great product. So let's just dial this in quickly here. And I'm going to come in. I know the settings I kind of like for this, but again, we're going to listen and then we're going to adjust. So here we go. So you can see just on the LED here for how much compression is happening. There's not a ton that's happening, but you can see every time that the kick hits, it's bringing it down ever so slightly, helping that bass sit in the track even better. I hope this helps you guys out in mixing this beast of what bass is. Again, it's such an integral part of any tune, and it doesn't have to be complicated to get it to sit in the mix and sound great in the process. If you guys have any other questions or comments, let me know down in the comment section. Let me know how you mix bass normally in the comment section also. Again, if you don't have my Studio One template and you do use Studio One, head to floodwaterstudios.com/template. Grab the free mix template right there. And I hope you guys have a great day. We'll catch you on the next one. Now go record something. See ya.